Welcome to University Drive, your pathway to the transformational work of University of the Bahamas. Our mission is to advance and expand access to higher education, promote academic freedom, drive national development, and build character through teaching, learning, research, scholarship, and service. Our goal is to build a better Bahamas by shaping tomorrow's leaders today, finding solutions to challenges, and forging new opportunities for growth. University Drive, where faculty, staff, students, and alumni travel the road of progress together with you. And now, here's your host.
The name ombudsman comes from Swedish and literally means representative. At the most fundamental level, an ombudsman is one who assists individuals and groups in the resolution of conflicts or concerns. There are a number of different titles or names for this position: ombudsman, ombudsperson, or ombuds, among others. Ombudsmen work in all types of organizations, including government agencies, colleges and universities, corporations, hospitals, and other medical facilities, as well as news organizations. Today's show will explore the role and function of an ombudsman. My guest is Ms. Marissa Mason-Smith, the university's and country's first ombudsman. Ms. Mason-Smith has an extensive and impressive professional background with over 25 years of experience in strategic leadership roles that saw the creation, development, and implementation of human resource policies, procedures, and standards for clients and organizations in both the public and private sectors. Ms. Mason-Smith, welcome to University Drive, and thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be with you today and to join our listening audience to share about the role of the ombudsman. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Well, let's get right into it. I know for a lot of people, some people are familiar with the term and other people are not. I know in recent years, we've had civil society in particular calling for the government and other entities to have an ombudsman, and the university made history by having the first in the country. What is an ombudsman?
Well, the ombudsman is truly a trusted navigator that leads to resolving issues, grievances that happen in an organization. As you will be aware that once people are involved, there will always be misunderstandings, there would always be grievances, there would always be challenges. And so the ombudsman is really that trusted navigator who will take the process to the very end, to completion, for amicable resolutions.
Now, why is it necessary for the University of the Bahamas to have an ombudsman?
Well, the importance of the university having an ombudsman is because of our diverse population and community. Firstly, the university must be commended for having the position filled as ombudsman. Firstly, it is also a statutory position, which means in becoming a university, one of the roles and functions that must be filled, and that is of an ombudsman. That brings additional credibility to the university, and the fact that we're reaching the big stage of competing with other universities. And so most universities around the world have an ombudsman who functions in that role of independence and informality, because they are not a part of the day-to-day operations of the university. So having an ombudsman at the university means that we have earned our wings as a university and we're moving in the right direction of progression.
Now, many people say, okay, there's HR, there's the general counsel that deals with the legal side of things, there's HR that deals with the human resource aspect. Where does an ombudsman fit in with those two? How is it similar? How is it different?
Well, first and foremost, the ombudsman is independent of the operational system. The office of the ombudsman complements the operations of the university. However, what happens in the roles of HR in particular and our other activities is that when there is an impasse and no one is able to bring resolution to the matter of concern, it is then escalated to the office of the ombudsman, who will then begin to redress the matters, call in the various heads of department or parties involved to begin a conversation and to find out exactly where are the challenges, why is it that we're unable to move forward, and then we seek resolution. I would then do an analysis of the matter and make recommendations. But working with HR, working with general counsel, and any other department at the university is what we do because we want to ensure that there is harmony at the university. We want to maintain a healthy and productive workplace at the university. Additionally, the Office of the Ombudsman also is responsible for all of our stakeholders. So anyone and everyone have access to the Office of the Ombudsman. That's students, former students, administrators, faculty, our vendors, and whoever is associated with the university in any way, and there is some form of concern or grievance, they can escalate it to the Office of the Ombudsman once they have done due diligence and have executed and have used every method that's possible to resolve a matter, but it has not been resolved.
Now, you said a whole lot just now, and it all deals with conflict resolution or resolving a matter where you feel that it's not been satisfactorily dealt with or justly dealt with. What are the steps that need to be taken? Does somebody come to you, or is there a process? Because I'm thinking there must be a process involved, and we don't want people to assume that, okay, I have this situation and I can bypass my HOD, or I can bypass this one and go straight to the ombudsman. What does that process look like?
The process is once the complaint has been escalated and there's been no resolve. And I always say resolve because you have to, first of all, show evidence that you have reached out to your HOD or you've reached out to the respective parties to demonstrate that you really wanted the matter resolved. And once you have exhausted the process, the internal process, you can call the ombudsman's office and make an appointment. And through that process, we begin to delve in and peel the layers and understand what is going on. And sometimes it is that there is internal conflict between what I think I'm expected, what isn't done, how I'm treated. And so we're able to resolve those kinds of issues through a simple email and I will set an appointment time for you and or make a call. And of course, we're able to start that process.
So let's talk about the different stakeholders in the university, because a lot of people will ask, is this a role for the students? Is this for faculty? Is this for staff? And I'm assuming it's for all of us. How will your office provide service for students, for faculty, staff, and all of the various stakeholders within the institution?
Well, what is that everyone has a different issue, complaint, and or concern. And once it becomes a grievance, the student can come and speak to me if he or she feels that they were not treated or didn't get the right grade, or if administrative services did not process them in time, or did not give them their refund in time, or whatever there may be, then that right, it can be risen to the Office of the Ombudsman. It can be a case where anyone may have experienced sexual harassment, or there may be a breach in the university policies. There may be some form of unethical code of conduct that may have been experienced by any one of our stakeholders, and they feel aggrieved by it. So they're able then to say, you know what, no one is listening to me. Nobody is taking my matter seriously. I need resolution. And hence, they will call the office and they can also have this matter resolved. One of the things about my position is I report directly to the board of trustees. And so anyone who has a complaint, anyone from the president right down to the entry level person, they can come to the office of the ombudsman with their concerns. And as a trusted navigator, I will listen, I will assess, I will analyze, evaluate, and make the necessary recommendations for resolution.
Now, we know that in our society and in our country, people are very concerned with confidentiality and sometimes even victimization. How do we then um, protect people or ensure, how do we safeguard, or how do we give people the assurance that their matters will be held in the strictest of confidence, and that there will be no negative backlash for them seeking to have a matter resolved and seeking the services of an ombudsman?
Well, first and foremost, the office of the ombudsman is governed by a code of ethics, confidentiality, neutrality, informality, and independence. Confidentiality is critical to the work of the ombuds office. The ombuds office does not release any information to any party to whom there is a grievance. The office of the ombudsman information is strictly confidential. Information can only be released at any level unless there is an imminent risk of physical harm that will affect the individual who is who has a complaint. And I have to request permission from that visitor, from that person, to say, I must share this information. So there has to be um, a neutral agreement and mutual consent with regard to release of any information. There are several times that I've had to say to persons, listen, you can be safe, it's comfortable here, and whatever we do and say, it's confidential. And so building relationship is very important. And the role of the ombudsman must be one of professionalism and must perform its functions under the code of ethics that is governed by the principles of practice by the International Ombudsman Association.
Now, since you've mentioned the International Ombudsman Association, what is this association, and is your office affiliated with this
Yes,
association?
yes. I'm proud to say that we are a member in good standing with the International Ombudsman Association. And when I became the ombudsman, I reached out to the professional network because, of course, this was new to the university. And so the International Ombudsman Association is the association that guides, directs, and ensures that ombudsmen maintain their code of ethics. They maintain and work under the principles of practice of an ombudsman. And also, they provide lots of training opportunities for ombudsmen and to ensure that we are on the cutting edge with regard to the changes that are taking place within the world. The International Ombudsman Association is made up with universities, government officials, made up of educators, persons in the legal profession as well. And so there is a very diverse set of professions that are part of this association. And we are governed by the codes of ethics, principles of practice.
Now, I know there are a lot of standards of practices that are used by your office. And one in particular, when I think of one of the standards of practice, you mentioned confidentiality, impartiality, and neutrality, independence, and informal. Pretty much give us some of those things are self explanatory, but for the person that is totally unfamiliar with the term ombudsman in the first place, break those standards down for us, please.
Okay, if I were to speak about independence, the Office of the Ombudsman is independent in its structure and function. And that is why I am not a part of the day-to-day activities or management of the university. My office is independent. I report directly to the chairman of the board of trustees and to the board of trustees. So that gives me independence of being um, associated or aligned with any particular department within the university. And then when we look at neutrality and impartiality, I'm unaligned and I'm impartial. I do not engage in any situation which could create a conflict of interest uh, between the university and between our constituents. And again, confidentiality, again, all communications are held in the strictest of confidence. The Office of the Ombudsman does not disclose confidential communications, like I said, unless there is an imminent risk of serious harm. And that again is done very cautiously and very, very discreetly. Informality. The Ombudsman is an informal resource and does not participate in any formal adjudications or administrative processes relative to or concerns brought to the Office of the Ombudsman. By that I mean, if an employee has a problem with, I'm just going to say HR, or have a concern with HR, that employee must follow due process from communicating with his or her supervisor to the manager onto the HR department for resolution. You cannot just wake up one morning and say, they haven't paid me my stipend since last year. Now, I don't know the circumstances. I do not know why, but if there's legitimate reason for that, and that process has been exhausted, then he or she will have to demonstrate to me that they have followed the internal formal process first and that it has come to a standstill. And then they're able to come to the Office of the Ombudsman, where I will seek to reconcile and resolve very, very quickly.
So you talk about reconciling and resolving. What does that look like? So if I come to you with a complaint, and like you said, I'm going to use the example you said that I wasn't paid a stipend. You don't necessarily know the background or the reason why, but I'm coming to you, I'm complaining. Of course, you're going to have to do your due diligence to find out. What then is the end result after you do what you need to do? How do you impact the decision that's made or seek a favorable resolution on my behalf?
Well, very good question. What I would do is to assess the situation, look at the data, look at the information. If necessary, I will speak with the Human Resource Department or the Finance Department, depending on the matter, and find out exactly why is it that the stipend has not been paid. And what I have found in analyzing cases is that sometimes it just got lost in the process, or there was miscommunication, or that it may have been paid and they weren't even aware that it was paid. And so once I've done my due diligence and I've been determined that the university and or the complainant matter has been duly processed, I can then make a recommendation to the respective department and encourage them to write to the person and say that, i.e., we will pay, i.e., this was paid to you in a salary, some whatever date it may be, and provide the supporting information. It is also very important that I follow it up to ensure that the matter is resolved. And I must say, and I must commend the team and the various department heads have been very responsive and effective in activating and responding to the recommendations that the Office of the Ombudsman may have made.
Well, that's good to know. So really and truly, you propose recommendations for the resolution. You don't necessarily have the final say. Is that correct?
Well, yes, to extent, because I have been able to communicate with the authorities, and I would say to them, this is in the best interest. We may have erred, we may have failed, and for most part, the recommendations have been accepted and effected based on my recommendations. Because one of the things is that we do not really want to be unfair to any of our constituents. And so when matters do arise, we want to resolve them quickly, amicably, because it affects productivity and job performance, whether you're a student, whether you are an employee, or whether you are a faculty.
Let's talk about that. Because those are three key points: productivity and performance, and how a work environment can influence those things. You're an HR professional as well. You've had extensive experience in the HR sector. And a lot of times we tend to negate those things when we're looking at productivity. What is the role of a good work environment in contributing to productivity?
I first and foremost, I would say the recruitment process is critical, very important. Having current and relevant job descriptions, and to have an effective environment where persons are constantly monitored, evaluated, and persons are allowed to grow and develop. It's also important that the environment be one of engagement, where you're able to talk, you're able to share your skills, and that the best of our employees come forth in the execution of his or her jobs. But there has to be alignment. There has to be alignment of the job description. There has to be alignment with the systems and the processes. And so technology right now is playing a big role in this. But there's nothing like when you do not hire for the right fit. Many organizations hire a lot on just qualifications. But qualifications is good in its place. I believe in it. I support it. I believe in continuous education. But what we want to ensure that to have a healthy and productive workforce, we need to have the right people in the right jobs at the right time, doing the right things.
The right people in the right jobs, doing the right thing. Well, based on the function of an ombudsman, and I know this is an HR, let's just say that I am in a particular area, and I'm not satisfied there. Is this something that I can bring to the ombudsman, or no, that is outside of your purview?
That is outside of my purview, unless that you are being adversely affected by stagnation, or you're being mistreated or disrespected in that particular role. And the conflict, there's continuous conflict or unresolved conflict within that department. But that is outside of the purview of the ombudsman, and that matter should be exhausted through the supervisor and the HR department.
Well, that concludes our first segment here on University Drive. We must take our first break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
To protect yourself and others from COVID-19, stay home as much as possible and avoid close contact with others. Wear a mask that covers your nose and mouth when you leave home. Wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds or use alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Practice social distancing. If you must leave home, stay at least 6 feet away from other people and disinfect items you must touch. Limit in-person contact as much as possible. To prevent the spread of COVID-19 if you're sick, avoid public transportation, ride-sharing, or taxis. Stay home if you're sick, except to get medical care. Remember to call ahead first. Separate yourself from other people and pets in your home. Everyone is at risk of getting COVID-19. Older adults and people of any age who have serious underlying medical conditions may be at higher risk for more severe illness. This message is brought to you by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and University of the Bahamas.
Welcome back to University Drive. I'm your host, Nikki Bo, and if you're just joining the show, my guest today is Ms. Marissa Mason-Smith, an industry leader in our country, the university and country's first ombudsman, and we've been talking about the role and function of the ombudsman. As we continue this conversation, what are some of the misconceptions that people may have of the role of the office of an ombudsman?
Well, I think some persons who may not understand the role of the ombudsman may see it as an extension of the administrative council, or they may see it as a part of the management function. And it is completely independent of both. My work is totally independent of the university. But as the ombudsman, I have my charter and terms of reference of which I function, and that is independent of the university day-to-day operations. I am there to ensure, to listen, and to ensure that the brand of the university and the reputation and the standards of the university are maintained. And it's important that we understand that all of our constituents, our entire community, is welcome to come to the office of the ombudsman if there are concerns that may have been unresolved for any extended period of time and have come to an impasse. We believe that the office is there to function independently, and we do. I listen, I assess, I evaluate, I recommend, and that's the role that I play. So the president does not influence my decisions. The external forces does not affect my process. And so I'm actively working independently, but in the best interest of the organization at all times.
It sounds to me then that you must be well versed in all of the different policies within the institution. Do you find that the university stakeholders are familiar with and understand the policies that govern them based on where they fit within the institution?
I do believe that they are familiar, but I do believe there's always room for continuous learning about policies and procedures. I do believe that there are persons who may claim they don't know, but there are people who know and don't know. Case in point, I've found that sometimes the only document that people understand in the university, and I say this respectfully, is the industrial agreement because it affects them personally. But there are other administrative processes and policies that govern the university and the extensive work of the university. And I do believe that all of our stakeholders are to be familiar and should make ourselves familiar of the policies and procedures of the university. They are online, they're always being made available. And of course, when in doubt, you always ask. But it's important that we stay on the cutting edge and to be familiar with the operational and administrative processes of the university.
I know one of the things in doing my research for this show and in talking to you and becoming familiar with the Office of Ombudsman, one of the things that I constantly come across is conflict resolution. And a lot of times we don't feel as though conflict resolution is something that needs to be dealt with in the workplace. When we think of conflict resolution, we typically think about, younger people and children and not being able to express themselves in a peaceful manner. How does what does conflict look like in the workplace? And do you think we tend to overlook this or sweep it under the carpet?
You know what? Conflict resolution is a reality. As long as we have persons to whom we are working with, there would always be conflict. Conflict as a result of misunderstandings, miscommunication. Persons feel that they are entitled to this promotion, or they're entitled to this office, or they're entitled to a position. But the thing about it is that conflicts will always exist. But we must understand the levels of conflict, and we want to avoid world wars. So it's important to listen, communicate, to be able to bring amicable resolution so that it won't escalate, and it brings more balance to uh, both persons, because unresolved conflict creates undue stress, and it creates enmity, it creates hostility. And so I am one who believes in resolving conflicts, and where possible to go and get the help if you do not know how to resolve conflicts. And these conflicts can arise from the top, and it can arise at the bottom. But when you are a leader in particular, you have to take that responsibility to understand the conflict, communicate it, find ways on how we can resolve it so that the organization can be productive. You can get the work done, you can deal with it. And so there are tips on how we can resolve conflicts in terms of making sure that we have a harmonious working environment. And one of the things that I'll always say is always remain calm and avoid being defensive.
Repeat that, always.
Remain calm and avoid becoming defensive.
Boy, for a lot of people, that's a difficult thing to do because we typically get riled up, particularly when we feel as though our rights are being infringed upon or things are not going our way. Do you think that we provide enough opportunities to help people navigate different personalities? I mean, because like you said, whenever you have more than one individual, conflict is bound to arise and it's almost inevitable. Do you think that we equip people with the skills and the tools that they need to properly navigate and manage conflict?
You know what? I would say yes, there is. I think, though, that there's much more that can be done. And I think it is also a matter of personal and professional choice that I am not going to be in conflict with anyone unnecessarily because it costs too much. It creates disengagement. It creates too many problems. And so I think we all have to learn to live peacefully. And of course, during this pandemic, I think even more, let me put it this way, in this pandemic, we have learned and must learn how to resolve conflicts, because in this time, we've never been home as much with children, with family, and of course, there's even conflict at home. So you have to know how to resolve the conflicts at home, balancing children, virtual studies with your children, home demands, work demands, and it can create a conflict. And so having the tips to resolve conflict is something that we can always be teaching on through all levels within the university, because we can all be the beneficiaries of it, and so can our families and our environments. It's absolutely painful when there's conflict at home and conflict at work. It creates undue stress, which I always say affects the bottom line, which is productivity. And of course, it will cause increase in our insurance premiums. And nobody wants our premiums to increase as a result of all the claims that are made for matters that can really be resolved if persons would take the time, make the choice that I am going to resolve these matters amicably, peacefully, and don't be grudgeful and hold it back, because sometimes what happens is there's revenge, but the thing about it is we want to become non-defensive and be respectful of all persons, regardless of where they're coming from, the diversity that we're seeing, the ability to compromise and understand what is going on, collaborate, talk, empathize. These are things that are needed more than ever before in the workplace.
I agree with you, but I'm gonna say this. There are some people that we work with that no matter what, they're the eternal pessimist. They complain about everything, they are disgruntled, they bring the morale of the team down. How do you deal with those types of people in the workplace?
Well, I think there needs to be, those persons need to be exposed through the proper channels. And I think that everyone needs to be able to handle um, their own roles effectively. Case in point is that where you have a lot of negativity, pessimism, you have persons who are destroying the morale of the team. Something must be done about that. But many times I've found that as Bahamians, we are very passive. We don't want to report anyone, but we talk around it, we skirt around it. But when those matters do arise, there is a protocol in which you should follow and escalate that. And then, secondly, there's always a performance appraisal systems that are used. Unfortunately, we will talk and talk about these persons, but when it's performance appraisals time, they're all glowing. And so there's always this contradiction is who's speaking the truth? And I think we need to get to that point where management recognizes the persons on the team that are not bringing the added value that is required, and try to work through. Sometimes people need counseling. Sometimes people really need professional help. And there are times in the organization that you cannot provide that assistance. So you need to refer for professional help. The direct costs, research has shown that it costs $359 billion in paid hours, or an equivalent of 385 million working days in the US due to unresolved conflict. And that's serious because if you do not value and measure the cost of conflict in the workplace, we are losing the levels of productivity. You're going to have increased absenteeism. You're going to have disengaged employees. And of course, poor performance. If we're not getting along inside of my organization, if we're not getting along well, believe you me, I'm not going to be engaged. If the environment is so hostile, nothing is going to happen. And it doesn't matter who you report me to unless that environment becomes conducive for working and to keep employees engaged, then we are going to have serious problems as it relates to the output of job performance. The Forbes magazine indicated resource says that 32% of employees are engaged in a workplace. 51% of employees are unengaged due to unresolved conflict. 17% of employees are disengaged. So if you look at 100% and you look at 68% of your workforce disengaged and unengaged due to unresolved matters and conflicts, then your productivity is low. And so we now need to look at metrics that will measure job performance. And I think that it is an area that we all need to focus on, and in particular, help persons to understand that we can do better. We need to keep our teams motivated. We need to understand that IQ is one thing, but more importantly, we need managers, leaders, and employees who have a strong EQ or emotional intelligence.
You're opening up another can of worms when you talk about this emotional intelligence, and it's one of the new buzzwords of our time, where we are this focus on emotional intelligence. How does emotional intelligence differ from IQ?
Well, IQ is your intellectual quotient. That means that you're smart, you can pass tests, you're degreed, you're qualified, you have all of the qualifications, certifications that is necessary to get the job. But many times, and research has shown that many of these persons who are on the high spectrum of IQ do not value EQ. And the EQ has to do with how you deal with people, your human relations, your awareness. Those areas are most important. And so your IQ is good for certain positions. Let me put it this way. I support and encourage persons who have IQ and continue to develop their IQ. However, more than ever today, equally, emotional quotient has to be at the same level of the spectrum. IQ must be equal to your EQ. If you are going to be able to have an organization that increases team performance, job performance, increases your leadership ability, it increases your overall personal well-being. It has so much benefits. It helps improve your decision-making process as well. And so emotional intelligence is very, very important. This is a subject that I love very much as an area of management that is critical to success of any organization. And Daniel Coleman did an excellent has done excellent research in this topic area. And so I hope one day we'll have the opportunity to talk a little bit more about the EQ. But it's very, very important because leaders must be empathetic. Leaders must understand exactly what it means to be motivated and to motivate your team. And you have to have your own self-awareness and be able to know how to get along with people. Very important. And respect people and appreciate people regardless of the diversity of where they're from. So I may have, and I'm saying this because of the academic environment we're in, you may have a PhD with honors, but you may have EQ equal to 0. And I'm saying, and we don't have that at the University of the Bahamas, but I'm just wanting to make example that we need to have both. If you're going to achieve and resolve conflicts, we need to have emotional intelligence as one of a tool that all persons are able to master.
Based on what you just shared regarding emotional intelligence and based on the matters that you've already dealt with at the institution, do you find that a lot of them arise not necessarily because people aren't able to come to a decision, or they're making the wrong decision, or is it because their decision lacks empathy and they're not looking at it from a human standpoint, and they're not looking at it from a relational standpoint, and sometimes just by the policy, and this is what it is, and it's a hard and fixed decision, as opposed to using discretion from an empathetic position?
To date, I have seen a combination. I must say that the team with whom I work do understand the importance of having a high impact teams. Now, there are times that there's been breaks in the system when COB transitioned to the university. There were some matters that were carried over. And of course, because of the demands that have been placed on the institution, some matters have not been dealt with the way it should have been. But I can say that they have been dealt with. And I want to give kudos that once it became aware and it was addressed, matters were resolved. And so I do not think that it's intentional by anyone to discourage or to not provide the benefits or the resolve in matters. Sometimes I do believe that with persons retiring, people leaving, um, promises were made and they weren't documented. You had persons who were performing jobs and they were told that they were going to get promoted to the next level. Of course, that's verbal. And so there are systems in place that we must be governed by. And so there's always safety when we follow the policies, the procedures, the industrial agreements, because I do believe persons are more litigious than ever before. People know their rights more than ever before. And so our systems, our processes, and our protocols have to be tighter than it's ever been before. But I do want to give credit to the university that we are truly the premier institution in the country, and I am proud to be a part of. And I am excited to see the work that has been done, the progress that is being made as it relates to our accreditation and our internal controls and processes.
Well, we're almost out of time. This time went by so quickly. What are your hopes and aspirations for the Office of the Ombudsman? What are you hoping to see this office evolve into and become?
Well, I would really like to see a greater awareness and education as it relates to the Office of the Ombudsman. That persons do not have to suffer in silence, or they don't have to understand or believe that there's nobody who cares for them, that nobody's interested in resolving their matters. I would like for persons to know that the Office of the Ombudsman is open to all persons, and they can feel free to come in at any time to speak to the ombudsman and to know that the environment is safe and it's confidential. And the fact is that we want to resolve matters. We want to ensure that any improvements that need to be made regarding certain policies, procedures, development, we want to stay focused on that, but we want to conduct and assist with mediation and to coach more of our leads or our constituency, our community on conflict, effective conflict management skills. Because I do believe that if that can happen, I do believe that we would have made a whole lot of changes in the university. The Ombuds Office, like I said, we do not provide legal services. The advocate when matters go before the legal counsel or the matter is taken outside of the university. Once it becomes a legal matter, the ombudsman no longer is involved in that process. So it's very important that you save yourself some money, you save yourself the stress of having to pay heavy legal fees, and come to the Office of the Ombudsman, where we will direct, we will provide our services to you, we will try to hear your hearing, and sometimes we do have to have administrative hearings. We may need to have a formal process depending on the level of the case, but the Office of the Ombudsman is governed by policies and procedures. And one of the the important matters, I wanted to say that there are no permanent records held against anyone um, who comes to the office of the ombudsman. The records are only retained for a short time and then they are discarded. But no one can ask for the records from the ombudsman office. And so everything is very confidential in the office of the ombudsman. So my expectation is to see more persons visit the ombudsman office if there are concerns, if there are complaints, and if they need a listening ear and or direction in having certain matters resolved. So again, we are open Monday to Friday, but of course, due to COVID, you can always send an email to ombudsman@ub.edu.bs, or you may contact me directly at telephone number 828-3268 for an appointment. We can talk online and we can arrange the conversations that is necessary. Another expectation is that you will see more of a presence of the Office of the Ombudsman with seminars and more workshops that will create a greater awareness of why we need to have a harmonious work environment and why we need to resolve conflicts in a very timely manner. And so we're here, the Office of the Ombudsman is located in the Harry C. Moore on the ground floor, but we are accessible via your telephone, via the electronic media, and coming soon would be the web page for the Office of the Ombudsman.
Yes, and I'm sure you're looking forward to that. Well, Miss Marissa Mason-Smith, thank you so much. You've shared quite a bit. That brings us to our second break. I'm your host, Nikki Bo. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Wash your hands. Protect yourself and help prevent the spread of COVID-19. Wash your hands properly and often, especially after you've been in a public place, used the bathroom, touched any surface or item, taken out the trash, handled pets, or after blowing your nose, coughing, or sneezing. First, wet your hands. Use soap, lather, and scrub for 20 seconds at least. Then rinse your hands for 10 seconds. Towel or air dry. Use a paper towel to turn off the tap. Don't forget to wash between your fingers, under your fingernails, and the top of your hands. If soap and water are not readily available, use a hand sanitizer that contains at least 60% alcohol. Use the sanitizer, cover all surfaces of your hands, and rub them together until they feel dry. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. This message is brought to you by the Ministry of Health Surveillance Unit and University of the Bahamas.
Welcome back to University Drive, a University of the Bahamas talk show. University of the Bahamas prepares students for a better life in a global society. Here's our Leaders for Life feature story.
For most people, the university experience is more than just lectures, assignments, and examinations. It's also about social interactions, campus life, and forging meaningful friendships that last a lifetime. BA Media Journalism graduate Andrea Darville's 11-year story at UB is one of perseverance, and her graduation in spring 2020 was bittersweet.
It feels really good. It was a long journey. For me, I'm super excited about being here at the end of this race. Originally, I started UB when it was the College of the Bahamas in 2009. I'm a transfer major, and just to know that from 2009, finally to be completing this journey of my life, I'm super excited.
Andrea was crowned Miss University of the Bahamas 2018. Following her reign, she also served in the Student Government Association as Senator for Communication and Creative Arts. Pledging Delta Sigma Theta back in 2009 was also a highlight of her university life. Still, mastering the skills that she needed to complete her BA Media Journalism program meant striking a balance between her co-curricular pursuits and academic life.
My UB experience was truly one that was amazing. I did not have much challenges here at the University of the Bahamas. When I came back in 2015, I made up my mind that I want to network. I want to make this the best opportunity of my life. So in 2018, I entered Miss University of the Bahamas, and I was crowned that year. Following that, I wanted to serve, so I joined the Student Government Association, where I was the senator from my unit, Communication and Creative Arts. And I pledged Delta Sigma Theta, and it was really a good experience for me. I can't complain because I didn't really have to go through all of the long lines. I made sure form good relationships, good friendships with persons in academic affairs and straight throughout the university. And one thing I must say that was really special to me was the relationship, the intimacy of my school. I have a very small school, which is media journalism. So the persons that I started the program with, I am graduating with. So each one along the way, we were there. We took the same classes together. The lectures were the same. So from the beginning to the end, I can say that I have a deep relationship with my lectures as well as with my classmates. It was a really good experience.
Now one of UB's newest grads, Andrea says these are the same lecturers, former classmates, and friends she will miss the most.
I'm going to miss the relationships, not seeing my lecturers. Like I said, we're like family because we're a small unit. I'm definitely going to miss my classmates as well, because I know that the dynamics of the relationships is definitely going to change. Persons are now going to further their education, go into grad school, some entering the workforce. So you won't be seeing everybody like you usually did when you came to school every day.
Andrea plans to return to university one day to earn her master's degree in international relations. With one phase of her life behind her and another one starting, Andrea credits UB for preparing her for what is to come and equipping her with the necessary leadership skills to ensure her success both nationally and internationally.
I can say that my greatest lessons that I've learned along the way was a true understanding of leadership, because the positions that I served in was one that really called for humility. And it made me understand a lot of what was going on behind the scenes and what it really takes to be a leader.
And lead she will.
Well, that concludes this episode of University Drive. Miss Marissa Mason-Smith, thank you so much for making this happen.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the work that you're doing as a leader and in this area of communications of the university. You're doing a great job, and I'm so proud of the work that you and the OUR
Office of University Relations, yes. Thank you so much for educating our audience on the role and importance of an ombudsman. And thank you to my listening audience. Be sure to visit our website at www.ub.edu.bs for all the episodes of University Drive. And follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I'm your host, Nikki Bowe. Enjoy the remainder of your day.
University Drive is a production of the Office of University Relations and the Communications and Creative Arts Academic Unit at University of the Bahamas. All rights reserved.